Never underestimate the influence that Z reviews can have. Because ever since he launched his rave analysis of the Jamo 803s, many of you have been hounding me to review them. So here we are, and the cool thing is, in between his review and this review, there was another YouTuber named Joe and Tell who also covered these speakers, and he didn't quite land on the same page. So now it's going to be my turn to see where I land and to hopefully tell you guys what this speaker is all about. So let's roll the intro. Okay, so normally this is the part of the video to where I step out of the frame and I focus on the product to talk about it for a little bit, but I have a new microphone, as some of you may have noticed, and it sounds like crud when I stand behind the camera. So I'm going to be lazy, I'm going to sit right here and talk about the product from this vantage point. So, starting off, as you can tell, the Jamo 803 that retails for $299 a pair, but can be frequently picked up for $100 less from authorized retailers, is a two-way monitor design. On top here, we have a soft dome tweeter that's housed in a little waveguide or a horn for you pedantic individuals. We have a 5-inch polyfiber woofer, which means polypropylene and fiber. We have a front port. Now this is going to be a bandpass design. Cliff Note version is designed to give you a lot of bass from a small cabinet. Turning to the side, we have the pretty Jamo text. On the back here, we have a couple terminals, but don't be too confused because this is an Atmos ready speaker. So the bottom terminals, which are 5-way binding post, they're what you plug your speaker cables into. And if you have the module that goes on top of this speaker, which let me show you this right here, you'll see the exposed screw holes there. And something that not everyone's going to like. But basically, if you decide to go that route, you put the module on top of the speaker, you run the cables from here to the module, boom, you're done. Last thing to show off is it has this pretty little bass on the bottom. It's not really there for sound quality, it's there for aesthetics, but it's worth mentioning because it does look pretty. And for the rest of the specs, just click on the description box below. I have a link to the product page, but now let's talk about how it sounds. Alright guys, so I'm going to get right down to it. These speakers have a very distinct sound. In fact, I can almost see a group of people sitting in a boardroom saying, okay, we're bringing a product to market for $300, how should we voice it? And then everybody unanimously agreed on the V-curve, which is when you boost the treble, you boost the bass, you recess the mid-range, and you do that because, well, quite frankly, a lot of people like that sound. In fact, products have been voiced like this on purpose throughout the headphone industry and even the high-end industry for a very long time. So what does that actually mean? Well, if you're to bring home these speakers, this is in general what you can expect. First and foremost, they throw down a huge soundstage. They have this very airy and spacious presentation that a lot of people are going to like. However, what you need to know is that the treble is going to be boosted. Like, definitively boosted. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just how they voice this speaker. It's lively and has a very pronounced top end. The mid-range is going to be recessed. Now it is going to be clear and articulate, but there's going to be no real warmth there to be had. And then you have the bass. The bass is going to be pronounced. And depending on how you have it set up, that could be a really good thing or perhaps a negative thing. Now we'll get to that in a bit. But overall, I would say this. This speaker is going to be for somebody who says, I like treble, I like a lot of bass, I want something that's small that has great power handling, I want something that sounds spacious. If you check off all those boxes, you're probably going to like these a lot. But if you're somebody who wants linearity and balance, if you're somebody who wants warmth or something that's a little smoother on top, you're probably going to be happy going with something else. Now, let's talk about some of the things that these speakers really excel with, starting with the soundstage. The thing about budget speakers is usually it's not a matter of whether or not they can throw down a wide soundstage. It's a matter of instrument separation. Can they place things within that soundstage with clarity and to give each little detail its own sense of space? Most budget speakers don't do that very well. These do. In fact, they actually sound like proper high-end monitors in that regard. Also, these speakers have proper depth to them, which is when you set them up right, there's layers within the music that are actually revealed, something that a lot of budget speakers, again, do not do. And I think that's really going to be the highlight of their presentation, is they do some things that remind you of a proper high-end monitor. Now, another thing that's really impressive is the power handling, because let's face it, Most speakers, again for the money, that use a 5-inch woofer, they're very limited in terms of how loud they can get before they hit a brick wall. These speakers can handle their stuff at high volumes very well. They maintain their composure extremely well, even when listening to fairly demanding music like electronic or pop or rock or metal or hip hop. Like if that's your thing, these speakers actually can take the volume, which means if you need something small that can fill a big room with a lot of sound, these can do it, and they can do it pretty well. Now, beyond that, let's start talking about the individual aspects of their character, starting with the treble. So as I mentioned before, the treble is boosted. Some of you will find it to be bright sounding, and what you need to know is that the treble, there's nothing you can do about it. It's so pronounced that no matter what kind of gear you connect these speakers to or what kind of music you listen to, it's always going to be pronounced. That's just a part of its character. Now, moving on, the mid-range. As I mentioned before, it's not the most full-sounding mid-range on planet Earth, but at least there's articulation there. A lot of people actually like that because a lot of speakers at this price sometimes can mask information, and I feel like that doesn't happen with these. You just kind of wish that there was a little bit more fullness if you're used to that warmer sound. And then moving on to the bass. This is where things get interesting because a lot of it hinges on a couple variables. Number one, the type of stands that you use. If you have really good stands, that'll help tighten up the bass. Number two, it depends on positioning, because even though these speakers have a front port, they produce a lot of bass energy, and I come to find that if you put them near a wall, like say 2 feet or closer to a wall, the bass can get really, really thick. Now you may like this, or you may not, but it's something that you should be aware of. Overall, though, the bass is definitely going to be pronounced. This is a speaker that's meant to, sound big, and that's exactly what they do. Now, we've already discussed imaging. When it comes to dynamics, the dynamics at low to medium volumes is actually pretty good for a speaker this size, but you will run into a limitation and compression, basically, when you start cranking the volume a bit on these speakers, but that's to be expected. And honestly, you'd have to have experience with some pretty high-end monitors in order to really pick up on it, given, of course, the size of these speakers. Otherwise, look, they have a very distinct sound, right? Something you're either going to love or you're not going to love. But what I'm going to do now is focus on some of the negatives that I haven't already covered, starting now. All right, so here's the deal. By now, you probably have a good idea as to whether or not something like this would even interest you, so I'm not going to repeat myself about the voicing of this product and the pros and cons that come with it. Instead, the only other thing that I need to mention as an actual con is going to be the top of the speakers. Just to remind you again, they have these holes on them, and it's going to bother some people and other people just won't care, but it's worth mentioning. I think this speaker would look a lot better without them, even though I understand the function behind it. But other than that, this is a very straightforward product, and that leads me to my final thoughts. So, the Jamo 803s, do they set this new standard for all speakers at this price point? Well, not really, but then again, how do you even define that? What the Jamo 803s are is a product that has a very distinct sound. And that's, in a lot of respects, what I like so much about them, is they're not trying to please everyone. They're for a distinct type of listener. If you're somebody who says, hey, I like treble, I like an airy and spacious presentation, I like a lot of bass, I want something that has great power handling for this size. If you check off all those boxes, then there's a great chance you're going to love these speakers. But there's also a good chance that you may prefer something else. And that's just what you run into when you come across a product that has such a distinct character. Now, hopefully this review has helped you in making a determination as to whether or not something like this is good for you. But this is going to wrap up my thoughts on the 803s. Guys, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.